Hey guys, what's up? It's Michelle. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to another video here on Chats with Michelle. What's going on, guys? How's it going? So in today's video, as you can see by the title, we are going to be talking about credit unions versus banks. As you guys know, here on this channel, we focus on adulting, the journey of adulting and purpose chasing. And in today's video, as you can see, it's going to be a very much adulting kind of a topic. I realized that, you know what? I'm a little like nerdy, I guess. My content is a little nerdy. So this is something that I really enjoy. So I want to go ahead and share it on this platform on my channel. So just a little backstory for you guys if you're not familiar, if you haven't watched my channel in a while or at all before. I have worked in the banking industry before. I don't know why I did this, like I actually have. But I have worked in the banking industry before, and I spent several years working in the banking industry, credit unions to be more specific. And one thing I noticed in working in the banking industry is that a lot of young people, one, don't really know the difference between having the credit union and having a bank, and also they just really don't know what the significance of it. Like I always say in these kind of videos, I always say that this is just my opinion. I'm not a professional and you should always do your own research, but I wanted to go ahead and just share the difference between the credit unions and the banks in my opinion, and the different pros and cons in my opinion as well. Ultimately, in this video, the decision is going to be really up to you. I don't necessarily think that one is bad over the other. They're just different, and you just have to decide what's best for you. So first, we're going to start with the credit union. I want to give some pros about the credit union. So first things first, I would say is that the credit unions are typically a lot smaller and they're usually a lot more personable. Now, obviously, there are some credit unions that are bigger than other ones. However, they typically a lot more family oriented and more intricate, and they pay a lot more attention to details. So that's definitely a pro about the credit union. And then a difference between the credit union and the bank is that you're typically a member of the credit union. Members are like shareholders of the credit union versus the bank where you're not. So you're a member of the credit union versus the bank where you're just like another number. Also at credit unions, they're typically better with loans and they usually have better rates. So with the credit union, oftentimes you'll get just better rates overall. They're usually a lot lower than the bank. And also, they're just willing to work with you. Like a credit union may be more willing anyways to give a loan to like a first time, maybe like a young person, if you've been banking with them for a long time, or even they tend to even just look at your situation. So like they will obviously run your credit, but they'll also just take a look at your situation. They're willing to kind of like work with you and just look into the situation. They value relationship really over just numbers most of the times or oftentimes. So they'll kind of like look at your history with them. They'll look at how much money you make. They'll look at how long you've been a member with them. If you have other family members that are at the bank, like they take into account all of those things. I used to work at, I worked at a couple credit unions before. So like I know this like from personal experience, and I've worked for more than one. And the last pro about the credit union is that there usually is zero or very low fees with the credit union. So typically, at least for the ones that I'm familiar with, there's typically no like monthly fee, no annual fee. Even like the fees that they do charge are usually a lot less than like well, not a lot, but they're like a little less than like the traditional bank. So for example, some credit unions, like I know some banks, they charge like $35 overdraft fee, and like a credit union, some credit unions might just charge you $29. Either or, that's a lot of money and you shouldn't be overdrafting your account, right? But things happen, and it's usually just a lot lower. Now, the con about credit unions is that they are a lot smaller. Now, I know I just said that that was a pro, but that's also the con about the credit union. Because they are a lot smaller, sometimes you cannot find them everywhere. So it might just be like, because with credit unions, they can just be like city credit unions or county credit unions, and you may not be able to find them in like another state, another county, or even outside of like, the US. Or outside of your country. Now, the difference though with the credit union, and I know I'm in the cons, but like this is kind of like, I guess, a pro, is that credit unions, they offer a system called share branching, which means that you can go to a sister credit union. Say, for example, if you bank at ABC Credit Union, you may be able to do your transaction at XYZ Credit Union because they're on the share branching system. Not all credit unions use that system, so that's what makes it a con, because like if your credit union just doesn't use that system, you're kind of just like stuck, and you have to do everything like online maybe. But yeah, so that's just kind of like a con, is that they're small. Another con about some credit unions are that they tend to sometimes have lower spending limits. Now, every credit union is different, and this is going to differentiate between credit union to credit union. However, some credit unions, they only allow you a very small spending limit. Like I've worked at a credit union where they would only allow their members to spend $500 maximum in a day. And granted, like maybe you don't need to spend $500 a day, but what if it's a day that you did need to spend $500? And that was in between the ATM and debit transactions. So that's like very limited. Now, granted, like I said, this is between different credit unions, but like that can be a con for someone, that you cannot spend all the amount of money that you would like to spend on in your account. And the last con about credit unions is that yes, they are typically very generous when it comes to loan, when it comes to their members. However, the thing is, because it's so small and because it's so personable, at times it can become a super tedious process. Like they go through everything with a super fine-tooth comb. Now that's a good thing in the sense, like, you know, they want to cover themselves, but like where you can, like, perfect example, like, and this would happen a lot when I was working in the credit union. We would be doing a car loan, and literally like the lending department would like just go through every single thing, on every single detail. It became so tedious that a lot of times we would lose our loans to the dealership, because listen, the dealership don't care. They're going to get you in and out. They're going to get you a loan. Whereas with the credit union, it could take a little bit longer, etc. So yeah, that's the only thing with the credit union. It could just be a very long and just tedious process. Now we move over to banks. One pro about banks are the obvious, that they are typically much bigger. Traditional banks are typically much bigger, which means that you can literally almost always find them on every single corner. Also other states, and then even sometimes other countries, you can find traditional banks such as like Wells Fargo's and Chase's and things like that. Now, contrary to the credit union, when you're trying to do loans at a bank, you can typically get your loan done a lot quicker because it's not this super personable thing. I mean, yeah, you might have like your loan officer when you're doing the loan, but it's just usually a lot quicker depending, but it's just not as super tedious as, you know, the typical credit union process. Another pro about banks is that you can typically have higher spending limits on your your debit card. And also you can usually have more than one of the same account. So I've noticed this in credit unions, that they'll only allow you to have one checking and one saving. Not all credit unions are like this, because I've actually seen it different in some credit unions. However, sometimes that's an issue in credit unions. You can literally just have one checking, one saving, and that's it. And with banks, you can typically have more than one checkings and savings account. Of course, that usually comes with a fee, but at least it's an option. And also, depending on the bank that you're with, usually if you're depositing like an actual physical check, the hold times are usually a lot quicker, and they're usually more willing to just release the money. I've seen sometimes in credit unions, like I said, it depends on the credit union, but I've seen it sometimes in credit unions where like they will hold a check for like ever. And I know a lot of times members would get very frustrated with that. Now, some cons about banks. Like I said in the beginning, they are bigger. Traditional banks are a lot bigger. So the con about that is that you tend to just be another drop in a bucket, another number, which is different from the credit union. The credit union is more of a personal experience. A lot of times the people who work at the credit union, you know the members, like they know you, they know your life story, they know you on a more personal level. Whereas at a traditional bank, you typically are just another drop in the bucket, another number. I mean, you can literally call, hang up, and speak to a completely different person every single time, like if you call so many times, whereas a credit union is a lot more personable experience. And another con when it comes to banks is that there are usually a lot of fees associated with the traditional bank. And it depends on the bank that you're with, obviously, but typically like you have to either have a certain balance in your account, like $500 or more, $300 or more, or you have to do some kind of transaction or like moving money around just so that you don't get but there's typically usually fees that are associated with banks, which people do not like, because, you know, you just want to have your money sitting in an account. I mean, let's be honest, the banks or the credit unions as well, if we're being honest, it's not necessarily like your money's necessarily growing. So, you know, to just be sitting there and then get charged a fee every single month because you don't have the you know, the minimum balance or etc., that can be a little frustrating. So that's why I know a lot of people typically like going to the credit union, because oftentimes with most credit unions, you don't have to have a minimum balance and there's usually no fees to keep the account. So guys, that's pretty much my take on the difference between credit unions and banks. Like I said, honestly, I don't personally think one is better than the other. I think that they're both great for what they are used for. I think it's great to have a credit union account, and I think it's also great to work with the traditional banks. I personally use them both, and I like them, like I said, for what they're good for. I pretty much use the credit union for the things that I know that they're great at, and I use the bank for what I know they're great at. So I would recommend you to, like I said, always do your own research, but I'd recommend you to honestly just do both. As always, guys, thank you guys so much for watching this video. You can share this video if you would like to. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video here on Chat with Michelle. Bye, guys.